to ask yourself, why censorship? Well, I have looked at a video of Miley Cyrus. She was in a little skimpy clad outfit. I didn't want to bring it because it was a little distasteful. But she was in a little skimpy clad outfit. I think it was called 23. And she was smoking a joint, drinking beer, and then she started out with a song. And the first words came out of her mouth was the F word. So, what is censorship? That's what we would, some would deem offensive. So who would govern censorship? Who can be censored? Everybody can be censored, but we have to decide who and what should be censored. Our kids are being subjected to so many videos, music, lyrics, and we have to ask ourselves, do they really understand and know what they're looking at? Do we have anything in place regarding censorship? Yes, we do. We have the FCC, known as the Federal Communications Commission. What does it do? Well, it was established in 1934, and it's supposed to govern what the radio and television and cable companies are putting out on the airwaves. But they agree that there's some foul language and a lot of stuff that we're seeing or hearing, but they also agree that it's the First Amendment rights of those to present what they want to present. So they have a rule and regulation in place, but it's not that great. And then in 2004, the Department for Decency gave FCC the right to make the decision as to what they consider indecent. So by saying that, we know that there's rules and regulations in place. We know that the rules and regulations could be tighter, and we also know that there's a lot, the parental thing. There's a parental advisory label. That parental advisory label is especially for the parents. But if you don't utilize that, it really doesn't help. The only other thing is to be an activist and really step out and say, we don't want this anymore. So since we decided that there are guidelines and rules and regulations in place, so you have to ask yourself, then, how does it impact our kids, the music? Well, the first thing I would like to say, some researchers feel that it's the environment. The environment could be kids coming from dysfunctional homes, coming from homes where the kids actually, where the parents actually listen to music themselves, so they don't censor what their kids do or hear. Then some researchers have said there's no impact at all. They look at some kids as being impacted because they're emotionally disturbed, they have emotional issues of their own, and therefore the music that they hear, it just forces them to react to it as an aggression. So with that having been said, then you have to ask, what kind of research has been done on this? This is from some psychological functions of music, past research, and 29% participants said they listen to the music for these reasons. They help them to think, and this is the means, the standard deviation, and the factor loading. So it helps me think, they say. It helps me, my thoughts elsewhere, better able to cope with worries, that I can recognize myself in lyrics. This is the reference, if you need to go to a reference guide. There's the Foundation for Pediatric Studies said there's some negatives to music censorship, but there's also some positives. They said some kids just listen to music just for the sake of listening to music. Some people say it relieves stress. Some say it elevates moods. So we have to look at it again. Who's really being affected? My negative thoughts about music is somebody else's positive effects. It's how we perceive it. And having said that, with some additional research data, This is from the Federal Trade Commission. On 9/12/2000, shows 80% rated movies, 70% restricted videos, 100% music with explicit content, warning labels. By the age of 19, the average child under 17 would have viewed 200,000 acts of violence, 16,000 acts of murder. That's a lot. And this is just, from this year, that particular year. So you can imagine how much influence television and music does have on our kids. And the research has also found that the younger kids don't know the difference between real and unreal, fact and fantasy. So, based on some of the research studies that I've done, and you'll be surprised if you go online and pull up explicit lyrics, there's so much stuff out there. It's just that people have tried to be activists and change it, but it hasn't been strong enough because they said that's the artist's freedom of expression, and you can take away the First Amendment rights of freedom of expression. So the airwaves say, well, we'll do it this way. We're going to only put in the rough stuff during certain hours. There are some kids that have no special hour to go to bed. So it's still being played. Well, they said, well, we'll put out a cleaner version of it. Well, somebody's cleaner version is still somebody's negative version. Because we have heard some of the stuff where they try to bleep over it. But you know what they're still saying. And if we know, 9 times 10 the kids know. Because they, like I said, I'm not into the rap music, so some of the stuff that they're saying, I might not like it, but I understand what you're saying. So if I understand, kids are much smarter today. They definitely understand it. So you have to ask yourself, okay, they've done research, they have tentative guidelines in place. So now, where does the censorship lie? You have to go back to the first line of communication, the parent, the giver of life. We are the first line of censorship. How often do you, for those who have kids that have listening devices or music devices, how often do you tune in to see what they're actually listening to? I remember that Will Smith song, Parents Just Don't Understand. We need to start understanding. We need to make contact. And we need to know what they're listening to and get an understanding of whether they know what they're listening to. Some kids said that they just listen to the music. They don't even listen to the words. Well, I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I just listen to the music. I don't listen to the words. But in this day and age, we have to start being attentive to our kids' needs. We have to make contact with our kids. We have to know what they're doing from day to day. We have to know who their peers are, because sometimes they're easily influenced by what their peers are doing. So, and I say that all that to say this. We are the first line of communication. Would you know by age of 2, a child is starting to speak and they repeat what they hear. And I know some of you have seen on videos where the kids are doing a little twerking. They don't know what they're doing, but people think it's cute. They hear rap words. They repeat it, but do they really know what they're saying? I transport kids from daycare to school in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. Would you believe some of these kids could hardly speak, but they know those rap songs. They know those curse words. And I said, well, where are you getting this from? My mom and daddy said. So you know what kind of moral values are being taught in that home. Not that we are perfect, none of us are perfect, but we as parents, we have to step up and step out. And as the young kids say today, we got to be on fleek. We got to be on point. And if we're not on point, then we're not doing our job as parents. So we should be the censors. Listen to what your kids are listening to. Pick up their listening devices and tune in. And if you hear something that you're not particularly satisfied with, tell them to stop it, put a hold to it, but explain to them why you're doing it. Don't just say, don't listen to it. Because kids 9 times out of 10 or listen to it anyway because their peers are doing it. So I say all this to say this. We are the censors. Do our jobs as parents. And if you feel that the music is still too harsh or too strong, then do something, become activists. I know Tipper Gore stepped out there and tried to do it, but lawyers came in and fought for the artists. Said, oh, you can't take away their expression in their music. So I like to end it by doing this. Every time I thought about this, it was kind of cute. And it made me remember. I know that there's a lot that we don't understand about kids, but it's time that we stepped up. So at this point in time, I would like to ask, are there any questions or comments or some facts and stuff I can bring to the forefront? Because the bottom line is, music will not be silenced. Unfortunately, it can be. Censorship causes blindness. So we as parents have to do the job.